All right, so here's a story that you're not going to see every day. It doesn't happen all that often, almost never, as a matter of fact. You see, GQ magazine surprisingly removed a very unkind and quite critical article about Warner Discovery President CEO David Zaslav. The unflattering article, what some might call, well, a hit piece, was written by film critic Jason Bailey, and he labeled Zaslav the most hated man in Hollywood.
Oh God, not the finger quoting thing.
In fact, the title of the article was also very inflammatory. Now, from there, a notable sequence of events took place that not only led to changes in the content, the tone, and the structure of the article, but ultimately spelled its complete and swift removal. It's not there anymore. Now, the only way to actually look at this article, its original form and its edits, at least how it was supposed to originally be presented, is to
time travel.
Browse through archived versions that are tucked away on social media links, because it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of other ways to find them. And here's an aside that's worth mentioning. The piece that was written was incredibly lengthy, over 500 words. They were very opinionated words, but they were well-informed words, and there were a lot of facts that the writer was armed with to back them up. Now, these actions are not only a bit surprising, they're nearly unheard of, like I said at the very beginning. So what happened? What's going on here, and is there some kind of corporate cloak and dagger involved? Well, a little bit of searching seems to indicate that could be the case. Let's dive in. Here we go. So I'm often very critical about the mainstream media. I mean, you can't blame me, right? Today will be no different. In fact, this story only reinforces my resolve to point out the many faults of modern corporate media.
I don't like the look of those air quotes.
Chief among them being corporate favoritism, which I don't think you can deny. And unlike the folks in Hollywood, I think David Zaslav is actually doing the right thing in an effort to right the ship over at Warner Brothers Discovery. Yet in this instance, I have to say that I'm quite taken aback. Why? Well, I've never before seen this kind of magic trick pulled on a corporate hit piece. It was a profile hit piece. There's no other way to describe it. Now you see the critical hit piece, and now you don't. Now, that's a disappearing act not even the White House has mastered yet.
I don't get it.
This recent removal of an article about Warner Brothers CEO David Zaslav has sparked a lot of intrigue and speculation. The piece was authored by a freelance journalist. His name was Jason Bailey, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video. It's a piece that paints Zaslav in a very critical light, especially his leadership decisions at Warner Brothers and, of course, HBO Max, which is now Max, and TCM. And it dubbed him the most hated man in Hollywood. Now, I use the quotes there because those are the quotes.
Darn, got me on a technicality.
And of course, while that sentiment may be true in some circles, in the business world, it doesn't quite ring the same bell. And so the series of events here is what marks this as an almost entirely unprecedented situation. Because after its initial publication, the article underwent a series of edits, but it was eventually taken down from the website following objections coming directly from Warner Brothers Discovery. Now, after that, the freelance writer, Jason Bailey, requested the removal of his byline, well, during the process of the edits anyway, and that's more than a little bit unusual. I would call it odd. And why would he do that? That's the other question. Now, there's a lot of claims that this was no longer his article, and that was trotted out there as an excuse. It's even suggested that his decision was front and center when pulling the article. There are even quotes to that effect. It's attributed to him in the Washington Post story on this particular issue. And that's possibly true. I mean, this account or this series of events or the descriptions there, that could float, but I don't buy it in full. Next, what happens is also something strange, because the original and revised article started to circulate widely on social media platforms, almost in a viral fashion, like somebody planned it, which now has started to change the story to one about just how much is GQ's integrity worth. And some people, well, don't think it's worth very much. And finally, this whole thing culminated in a decision to remove the article, as I mentioned, without providing any explanation to the readers, who I would imagine were a bit confused, especially those who read the article, sent it to somebody else, and they're like, it's not there anymore. To say that's highly unusual, a highly unusual occurrence for a publication like GQ to do would be somewhat of an understatement, because like many publications similar in stature to GQ, it is typically quite a lengthy process to retract an article. Sometimes it takes months or years, or even to correct a little bit of misinformation. However, in this case, it was removed, well, rather swiftly. In fact, I don't ever think I've seen anything removed this quickly. So they trotted out a GQ spokeswoman who basically provided a statement saying it was not properly edited to go live. Of course, there's more to the statement than that. The Condé Nast publication itself acknowledged that there were errors in the article by Bailey after it prematurely published the article. Then the magazine stated that the revised version was released, but upon the writer's request, they chose to unpublish the article and remove it entirely, and again cited another editorial error. I want to add this bit of context here because I think it's important after all of that stuff I just went through. The writer in the article was asked specifically to produce said article. So there's that. Now, Warner Brothers Discovery is the primary subject of the piece, well, specifically Zaslav and his leadership. And they expressed their concern to the publishers over at Condé Nast that they really didn't get any contact, well, in fact, none at all, from Bailey during the writing process, which is kind of a standard practice in journalism, at least for corporate coverage, because you want to give them a chance to respond, especially if you're going to write something with this tone, right? Something critical. You want to make sure your facts are right. And they highlighted the absence of fact checking in the article. And then they contacted GQ, and the rest is history. Ultimately here, the result is just a bunch of embarrassment for everybody that's involved, and you can't blame them. There's a lot of growing suspicions as well because of how things transpired, in particular between the publisher, Condé Nast, and Warner Brothers Discovery. Why? Well, there's no doubt that the spotlight on David Zaslav has been, well, particularly bright since the $43 billion merger, spin-off, Reverse Morris Trust. It's all pretty accurate, to be fair. When they actually became Warner Brothers Discovery, which happened not that long ago, 2022. That spotlight, as I mentioned, is only intensified on Zaslav. He's been overseeing very important and, well, valuable assets like Warner Brothers Pictures, HBO Max, and so on and so forth, including some streaming systems that now are supposed to be combined but are not combined, but that's a story for another day. Now, to be fair to Zaslav, he's actually faced some things that, well, not a lot of other CEOs have had to deal with. Some conundrums with financial improvements and managerial conundrums that were left to him by the previous regime. Recent incidents would, well, include a controversial commencement address by him personally at Boston University and a series of staff cuts at, well, TCM and other places that drew criticism from prominent filmmakers and, well, newsmakers and a lot of other folks. And of course, all of that, it amplified the scrutiny that he's under. So how, with all that meat on the bone of a story to cover over at GQ, did this just quickly, but not very quietly, get swept under the rug? Well, enter the Newhouse family. They pretty much own Condé Nast. Well, they do own Condé Nast. And they have some very deep connections at Warner Brothers Discovery through board seats and ownership stakes. That's right. They have substantial conflicts of interest here, especially in regards to, well, retracting a story. And I would suggest that that really can't be ignored. And then, of course, a representative from Warner Brothers Discovery came out and said, well, that didn't have any influence in the events that happened at all, especially the events that surrounded the removal of the story. Okay, but can you actually believe that? I'm going to leave that one for you to answer personally, but for me, well, I'm going to say what I always say. If you believe that, I have some swampland in Louisiana I'll sell you. In any event, the layers to this controversy are many. And we're left here examining the role of media conglomerates and editorial practices and the challenges that are faced by high-profile CEOs by David Zaslav, and of course the conflict of interest that comes up from ownership of things that interact with other things and maybe give them preferential treatment. Like anything else, truth is incredibly important to me, and it's important to separate fact from speculation and gain a deeper understanding of some complex dynamics that are in play here that shape the media narratives and the corporate responses to them. Yet, in this case, I would suggest that in conclusion, that this story is puddle deep and is likely exactly what you think it is. Anyway, what do you think? Is there something to the idea that this was killed off by Warner Brothers Discovery making an appeal to the influential owners at Condé Nast? And can we take at face value for some reason the statement of events from the writer and the spokesperson from GQ? Oh, and here's a funny question to wrap that all up.
Why are you staring at my breasts, Peter?
What I meant to say?
Did you realize that GQ was still around? Because I hadn't heard of it in a while. Please let me know your thoughts down below. It truly does help inspire more content here and obviously drives conversation, which I like to have. And as many of you have noticed recently, I do try to make and read and answer as many comments as I possibly can on the majority of my videos, time permitting. Please be sure to check that you're subscribed, because there's a lot of people that aren't. And if you do that, we can certainly reach that 10,000 subscriber goal quicker than I ever imagined. And thank you to those of you who have taken me up on that. I truly appreciate it. One last thing, do be sure to hit the notifications bell so you don't miss the live streams, the videos, the polls, or whatever else, because I might do a short occasionally. Although, they don't really seem to help me. Anyway, be sure to take care of yourself, take care of others, wash your hands, of course, because it's good hygiene. And until next time, bye.